Okay, so in our last session, we were discussing about how we are generating the transition diagrams using our regular expression. So we have looked into few examples with regard to generation of transition diagrams. So as we have already seen that transition diagram are nothing but a collection of nodes or circles which are basically represented as states, and there will be a movement from one state to another state on receiving or seeing an input symbol, and there are going to be a set of final states as well as an initial start state in our transition diagram. So to draw an transition diagram, we also maintain that lexeme begin and forward pointers, right? So in order to identify our lexemes and return tokens, we need to have these pointers as well, right? So we had seen few examples of transition diagrams. So this one that you are currently viewing on your screen is the transition diagram for a relational operator, right? So what's a relational operator? Relational operator can be any one of the following. So how do we identify that this is the relational operator? So like we can have cases for less than, we have cases for less than or equal to, or we can come across greater than or equal to, or maybe not equal to as well, and equal to symbol, right? So all of these things are relational operators. So they are basically considered under the token relational operator. So whenever we come across a token, or whenever a lexeme matches a particular token, what we do is we are supposed to return, right? So we're supposed to return them as a token, right? So we know that a token contains two things. One is the name of the token, the other one is the attribute associated with the token. So in this particular case, we will return that we have actually identified a token called as relational operator. Along with that, we will also pass on what is the type of the relational operator. Like for example, less than will be indicated with LT, and less than or equal to will be indicated with LE. Greater than is going to be indicated with GT, and greater than or equal to will be indicated with GE, so on and so forth. Not equal to will be NE, and equal to will be EQ or something like this. So this is what we are supposed to return. And one more thing is that if uh, you come across any other symbol, like obviously the boundary of the lexeme is supposed to be identified every time you are returning a token. So that is where that forward and the lexeme begin pointer is going to come into picture. So what we do is we start with lexeme begin and moving the forward pointer, advancing the forward pointer. So as we advance the forward pointer, if we come across any character that is not a part of the regular expression or the pattern, then we are supposed to move it back, okay, or retract it back. So that also needs to be considered in our transition diagram. So accordingly, this is what we had seen in our last session. So we have the start state, we will indicate that with 0. So on reading less than symbol, let us assume that we go to state number 1. Now still there is a confusion regarding whether this less than symbol is just a less than symbol, or is it less than or equal to symbol, right? So if it is only less than symbol, then it's fine. Okay. So if it is less than symbol, then it is fine. If it is less than or equal to, we have to read the second character, right? So from state number 1, we will read the next character. So possibilities are that you can come across equal to symbol, or you can come across this symbol, greater than symbol, or else you may read something else which is not a relational operator. Okay. So accordingly, we will have few states defined for them. Okay. So like for example, if I read an equal to symbol, then I know that I have read a less than or equal to symbol. So in this case, I will return that I have read a relational operator less than or equal to. So if this is the case, then I will be returning relational operator again, but this time it is not equal to. Okay. If I read anything else, like for example, if the statement was A less than B, so I have already read less than symbol, but then I am reading a character which is not a part of any patterns related with relational operator. So obviously I know that I have seen just a less than symbol, right? So I will return relational operator and less than symbol, but I had already moved the pointer forward, right? So this is not a part of our regular expression. So what we need to do is we need to retract it back. So those cases where we have to retract back, so we will mark by star. Okay, so which you can also observe here in the diagram that state number 4, state number 8, all of these two require retracting of forward pointer, right? So because we have to reset the values so that we do not miss out on any characters that may become a part of the lexeme, right? So this is the transition diagram for the relational operator. So similar transition diagrams we had considered for identifier. As you can observe here, this is a continuation of the same transition diagram written separately. We can group them together into a single transition diagram in the end. But however, let us look at how to write a transition diagram for the same. So you can see that an identifier is nothing but a letter followed by any number of letters or digits. So until you come across anything that's not a part of this, we will be considering those things as a part of identifier definition. So when it comes across that, same thing will happen. We will return token and install that particular symbol that we have read into our symbol table. So install ID is a function that will add the contents into the symbol table, let us assume. Okay. Next transition diagram was for keywords, right? So we know that keywords and identifier definitions are almost one and the same because every keyword can be matched by the identifier definition because it's letter followed by any number of letters, right? But we specifically can write a transition diagram for every keywords that are used in your programs. Like for example, one keyword then, which is used in your if statement, that has been given a transition diagram here. So state numbers have not been mentioned because it's understood that we are not going to identify or we are not going to consider these things as a part of our transition diagram. Okay. One more transition diagram which is written here for numbers, unsigned number, which we had seen the regular expression. So for the same, we have written the transition diagram. Okay, I think we also traced this out in the last session. So state numbers have been continued from the previous diagram of identifier. So we have around 21 states in the transition diagram. So you combine all of these things, you'll get a big transition diagram or a automata, which we can actually use in order to uh, generate our code. Okay, because ultimately that's what we are supposed to do. Okay, now to generate the code, we will use the following. Okay, there's one more transition diagram for delimiter. Obviously, can be a part of our transition diagram. Okay, so how do we write a code for this, right? How do we generate a code for this? So normally we will consider state as a variable. We will consider state as a variable, and we will use a multi-way branching in order to decide on what piece of code has to be executed upon which state you have reached. Okay, so basically a switch-based value state is going to be used in order to take us to the code for each possible state. Of course, we know what has to be done in each state. For example, check here on in state number 22. When you are in state number 22, you will read the next character. So when you read the next character, if it is a delimiter, then you will be going or switching to state number 23. So in state number 23, if you read another delimiter, you will be still in 23, state number 23. Okay, if you read anything other than that, you will be reaching state number 24, right? So similarly, in this diagram, if we start at state number 12, if I read any digit, then I will be moving to state number. I have to change the state number to 13, right? So in state number 13, what are the options? Options are I can read a digit, in which case I will remain in state 13 only. I can read a dot, which will make sure that I change the state to 14. If I read E, I will be moving on to directly to state number 16. If I don't read anything else, if it is anything else, then I move to state number 20, where some action is supposed to be taken because it is a final state, right? So when you reach a final state, you will be taking up some action. So let us go back to that transition diagram of ours. So here, right, so when I start at state 0, I will read the next character. Okay, so you have to write a code to read the next character. So this is what the thing is. Right, so when you are in state number 0, suppose if you are reading less than or equal to something like this, right? So when you are in state number 0, so in state 0, what you are supposed to do, you are supposed to first read the character that is present in the input. Okay, so when I see this less than, right, then I have to change the state, right? So state is now changed to 1, right? So at state number 0, at state 0, if I read the whatever character I have read, if it is a less than symbol, whatever character has been read, then I have to change the state to 1. Okay, so in state number 0 again, right, in state number 0 again, if the red character is equal to, so then I have to change the state to 5. Okay, and of course I have to return, right, I have to change the state to 5 and I have to return the relational operator along with equal to as the attribute value. Okay, so in state number 0 only, so if I have seen a greater than symbol, okay, then I have to go to state number, change the state to 6. Got it? Change the state to 6. Now if you check here, each state themselves are a multi-way branch. Okay, like for example, in state number 1, I have got multiple options here. So in state number 1, so I will read the next character. If the next character is equal to, then I will be changing the state to 2, right? So like this, we can keep on generating the multi-way branching, or basically we can generate switch statements from the transition diagrams to generate the piece of code that is required for us. Okay, so let us just look into this. Okay, I'll just show you this. So just for your reference, I'm keeping the transition diagram side by side with the code that we are supposed to generate. Okay, so this is a piece of code, or you can say pseudocode. Okay, so this is pseudocode that is generated for a relational operator, right? So let us assume that we have devised a function to identify a relational operator as a token. Okay, so that function name we will call it as relational operator, get relational operator. Just a second. Right? So we'll call it as get relational operator. So that's the name of the function. So obviously this function is going to return a token. So what is the token that is going to be returned? Token returned is either it is going to be like relational operator, of course, it will return that we have generated or we have seen a relational operator, and what is the type of relational operator that has been shown, that has been identified. Okay, so this is the token that is going to be returned by this particular function. Now for other tokens, we can have similar functions generated. Okay, so this is just an example for this particular transition diagram. Okay, so let us first create, see we have to return a token. So first let us create an object. Okay, so let us create an object first. So token of type token using the new operator. Okay, so we are creating a object of type relational operator. Okay, now of course the input reading has to be done repeatedly unless you come across an error or unless the input is over. Okay, so let us put a while statement here. So while 1, so obviously we are repeatedly reading the characters and trying to identify and return the tokens associated with them. So this is an infinite loop now. So we can see that there are multiple switch cases, right? So let us assume that initially state value is 0. Okay, so initially let us assume that state value is 0 because that is where we are going to start. This has not been declared here, so let us assume that. So switch to state. Okay. Now in state I have got what? I have got so many states in my transition diagram. Like for example, in this case I've got from 0 to 8. So if it's a transition diagram that is a combination of all the other transition diagrams, then you know that there are around 24 states in my uh, transition diagram, right? So obviously there will be 24 cases in the switch statement. Like what has to be done if you come across state 1 or state 2 or state 24, so on and so forth, right? So here we will not write the code for all the states. Okay, we'll only highlight a few. Like for example, for case 0, right? So for case 0, when I'm in state, case 0 means what? When I'm in state number 0. Okay, so when I'm in state number 0, what has to be done? Right, so first of all, I have to see the next character, or I have to look up the next character to decide to which state I'm supposed to move. Okay, or what is the action that I'm supposed to take in state number 0. So that's why we will read the next character. Here you can observe, we will read the next character. Okay, we'll read the next character. So when I read the next character, so for example here, just a second. I hope you are able to see this. Not responding. So anyhow, so first read the next character, right? So when I read the next character, what are the possibilities? The possibilities are that it may be a less than symbol, correct? Or it may be a equal to symbol, or it may be a greater than symbol, right? So three cases are there. Okay, so generate if the red character, okay, if c is equal to less than symbol, right? So if c is less than symbol, where I have to go? I have to move from state number 0 to state number 1, or in other words, I have to change the state value to 1. That's it, right? So change the state value to 1. As you can observe in this code, I change the state value to 1. So if not less than symbol, then what else? It can be equal to, right? So if it is equal to, then move to state number 5. Okay. So in state number 5, you will have a return statement. Okay. Next, if it is greater than symbol, then what we are supposed to do? Supposed to move to state number 6. Right? Sorry. Just a second. Okay, so that's some technical problem. I hope I'm still audible. Okay, so we'll just look into this. So as I was saying, we have got a switch statement here, and the switch statement basically implies the states that are present in our transition diagram. So we have got switch to state. Okay, so as I've already explained, case 0. So in case 0, we will read the next character in the input. So when the lexer reads the next character, it will check whether it is a less than symbol, or whether it's an equal to symbol, or whether it's a greater than symbol. So depending upon each one of them, we will be moving to different states, right? So we will be moving to, like for example, we move to state number 1 on reading less than symbol. We move to state number 5 on reading equal to symbol, and we move to state number 6 on reading the greater than symbol. Now what if we read anything else? Okay, if it is anything other than this symbol. So if you read anything other than this symbol, then obviously you have come across something that's not a part of the pattern, or it's not a valid lexeme. So you will call a function, maybe consider it as a fail, which will basically come out of this while loop and indicate what error has been seen to the lexical analyzer. Okay, so this is what happens when you come across case number 0, right? Now similarly in case number 1, as I said, that itself is a multi-way branching, correct? So in case number 1, what are the possibilities? What can happen in case number 1? So in case number 1, or sorry, in state number 1, right? So when we go to state number 1, all right, so let us try to write the case. It is not present in the code, so let us try to write it. Okay, so case 1. So in case 1, again I will read the next character. Okay, so I'll read the next character. So whatever character we have read, there are three possibilities here. Okay, so either it is equal to, or it, sorry, two possibilities. Okay, three possibilities. Either it is equal to or greater than, correct? So if it is equal to, okay, if it is equal to, if C, that is red, if it is equal to symbol, then I have seen an equal to, less than or equal to symbol, right? So I will be going to state number 2. I have to change the state number to state is equal to 2. Okay, now similarly, if I have seen a greater than symbol, so if C is else if you can write, so else if C is equal to greater than symbol, then state is equal to 3. Okay, so if you read anything else, then you can go with else, or in this case anything other, you will go to state number 4. Okay, so if you are doing that, you go to state number 4. So now corresponding to case 2, we have to write cases for case 2, case 3, case 4, so on and so forth. Okay, so one such state for the final state, or the accepting state, has been written here. You can observe. What do we do when we reach the accepting state or a final state? Now same thing can be repeated for all the final states that are present here. So when you come across case 8, okay, so in some cases, for example here, as it has been seen, it has been marked with a star. So once it has marked with a star, you have to retract the forward pointer. Okay, means you have to do forward minus minus. Okay, so you will call the function called as retract, which is going to do it for you. So retract the forward pointer. Now we are supposed to return the token. Okay, so we will set the attribute of that particular token as GT. Okay, suppose if this is the state where I am trying to write this code, then I have to set the attribute value to LT. Okay, so once the attribute value is set, we will return these two values as the token. Okay, with the name of the operator, name of the token, and the attribute of the token. Okay, so return RET token, right? So it will contain the attribute value, and of course it already contains the name of the token. Name of the token is nothing but relational operator. Okay, so this is how you can convert your transition diagram to a piece of code. Okay, so this same exercise can be repeated for all the transition diagrams that we have already seen. Okay, so this is how things normally work in the regular the lexical analyzer when we use regular expression. Okay, so on paper itself we can develop all of these things, right? Like for example, first we need to write the regular expression or pattern for the lexemes that we are trying to identify. This is the first case. So once we do that, then represent that regular expression in the form of a transition diagram. So it will be easy for you to represent the same. So once you represent the regular expression in the form of a transition diagram, then convert the transition diagram into a piece of code. Okay, so these are the processes that are involved in generating a lexical analyzer, right? So once the token is given, token is generated and given to the parser. The parser is next going to take up the process of performing our next phase of the compiler, which is the syntax analysis. Okay, so the content of lexical analysis is still till this only. So obviously next we are supposed to continue with our syntax analysis. Okay, so do you have any doubt up to this point? Any doubts up to this point? So what is important here to understand is how do we write regular expressions and how do we convert these regular expressions into transition diagrams, and of course how do we convert these transition diagrams into piece of code. So which, with an example we have already discussed. You can look into those examples again if you have any doubts regarding those. Okay. So any doubts with regard to lexical analysis, because next we are supposed to start with syntax analysis. Now we will do that once I complete the Yak part. Okay. So if you have any doubts, you can ask. Otherwise, I will continue. Okay. If you have any doubts, do drop them in the comment message box. Okay. Uh, so in our last lab session, I discussed about two Lex programs, right? So we had seen two Lex programs, which was to eliminate the comment line and to identify an expression, right? So both programs were discussed. I would like you to execute them on your system and keep it ready to submit the results of the output of that particular programs along with all the other exercises, right? So one more extra program we have discussed, which is also part of your theory, which is a word count program. Okay, so in the textbook they have implemented it differently, but nevertheless both of them are the same program. Okay, so as I said, in Lex and Yak, it's not necessary how you implement it. Basically what has been implemented is important. Okay, so we had seen the work of Lex, right? So what is the work of Lex? The work of Lex is to return tokens to our parser. Okay, so we are supposed to return tokens to our parser, and parser is the one that actually requests for the tokens. Now why parser is requesting for tokens? Okay, that's the next question, right? So it has to understand what is present in the input in order to analyze or verify whether the input is matching a grammar. Okay, like for example, if I write a grammar, okay, I'll say take the same grammar, which is subject, verb, and then object, right? So this grammar can be matched by n number of sentences, right? So there can be n number of sentences in English which can actually match this particular grammar, because subject can be subject name, object can be object name, verb is an action word. So there are so many action words, there are so many subject names, there are so many object names, right? So how do we categorize that all of these are subjects? How do we categorize that all of these are verb? How do we categorize that all of these are object? So that is what the task of the parser is. So first of all, it has to know that there is a subject, there is a verb, and there is an object. So in the input, okay. So that job is actually handed over to our lexical analyzer. So it will identify that This is the token that we have seen, and it will be providing the token so that our lexical, so that our syntax analyzer can put them in its place and verify whether the input is as per the grammar or not. Okay, so this is the process that is followed when syntax analysis is performed. So basically we are verifying the syntax. We are checking whether everything is in their proper positions or not. Okay, now what has to be there, that will be given by the lexicon analyzer. Using those, we will check whether they are in their proper place or not. Now, as I had explained earlier, the lexical analysis is something like a spell check that we do, okay, and ensure that it is a proper word. And we say that, okay, there is a proper word present in this particular place, in this sentence. Okay, and syntax analysis is like grammar check. Not only we need to verify the spelling there, but we also need to ensure that they are in their proper positions, right? So as per the grammar, they are in their proper position. So this process is actually known as syntax analysis, right? Now, just like how we developed a lexer, correct? We developed a lexer or a syntax analyzer by using a tool called as lex. Okay, in a similar way, we can also develop a parser. Okay, parser is nothing but syntax analyzer, right? We can also develop a parser by using a tool called as Yak. Okay, now what we did in lex, a similar thing we are going to do in Yak also, because both of these are tools, right? Both of these are similar tools that are used to develop a lexer as well as a parser, which will perform syntax analysis as well as lexical analysis, right? Now, how do we use this Yak? Okay, first of all, let us know what is Yak. I think I had elaborated what is the expansion of Yak. So Yak actually stands for yet another compiler. Okay, so it stands for yet another compiler. Okay, and this is a tool that will be developing a parser for us, right? So first let us look at the syntax of the Yak program. Now how exactly it is. So it is almost similar to your lex program. Okay, so if you had understood the concept of lex, we know that the lex program contains three sections, right? So we have the declaration section that is defined inside this symbol. Then separating the first section with the second section is a double percent. So here also we have double percent, and then separating the second section and the third section is another double percent, and followed by one more section, right? So same definition exists here, or same structure exists here also, with few changes. Okay, so just highlight those changes here. So the first section is as usual called as the declaration section. Okay, it's called as a declaration section. So this declaration section contains all the declarations that we normally do in our lex as well as in C programs, right? Then followed by the rule section. Okay, the second section is the rule section. So I'll elaborate on that later. And as usual, the third section is the user subroutine section. Okay, right? Now in the user subroutine section, we have got main as usual. We have got main, and just like how we used to call yylex, okay, how we used to call yylex in main function to invoke our lexer. Similarly here, we are going to call yyparse. Okay, we are going to call yyparse. So yyparse is the function to call the parser or to start our parsing process. So this yyparse in turn will have a call to yylex. Okay, right? So this is, and along with main function, you can also have other functions, like one function, optional function we had in our laboratory session, which was ywrap. Okay, so that function also you can have, or else you can define your own function. So what would happen is all your user subroutines or functions that you have defined here, they will straight away go into that lex.yy, like that C file that is generated. Okay, that C file that is generated. So it will basically be copied. Everything from the declaration section and the user subroutine section will be copied as it is into our C program that will be generated by our lex and yak. Okay, so you can write any function in the user subroutine, but of course remember that one main function should be there, and obviously that main function should have a call to yyparse. Okay, so this is one thing. Now, what are the other changes? The other changes is obviously in specification of the rules. And one more additional thing is that you are supposed to mention to your to your parser, what is the token that you are expecting. Okay, so in between this double percent symbol, we will have percentage token, and then you are supposed to specify what token you are expecting. Okay, so of course separated by spaces, no comma. Okay, so this is what the structure of the yak program is. Okay, now let us concentrate on our rule section. Okay, because once again, just like lex, rule section is the core or the main part of the yak program. Okay, now when it comes to specification of the rules, we have got understand that uh, just like how lex requires regular expressions, okay, to do its job, yak actually requires grammar. Okay, yak actually requires grammar, right? What type of grammar we are talking about? Obviously, we are talking about the context-free grammar. Okay, now if you are wondering why we are studying the automata theory and CFG and regular expressions and all in the automata, this is the reason, right? So we are actually using the grammar to perform syntax analysis. Okay, and which type of grammar? We're actually using the context-free grammar. Okay, now for those who don't know what is context-free grammar, so context-free grammar is of type VTPS, right? So it's of type VTPS, or it's a quadruple VTPS, where V is the variable, T is the terminal, P is the production, and S is the start symbol, right? So we'll look into an example of grammar later, but understand that yak requires grammar. So you should write a CFG in the rule section of our yak. Okay. Now, how do we write the rule section? Once again, rule section can be divided into two parts. So first we will write the rule, which is nothing but the grammar, and then it can be followed by an action. May or may not, but can be followed by an action. So rule part will be specified. So and then followed by an action, just like how we had written in our lex program. Okay. So this is the structure of yak program. So how to run this yak program? Obviously, yak program will have some association with a lex program. Okay, so yak will have some association with the lex program. So what is that association and how to run this yak program along with the lex file integrated? So we'll look into that later. But just like how lex file has an .l extension, your yak file will have a .y extension. Okay, so remember this, right? So let us look into a simple example of a yak program. Okay, but before that, let us consider a grammar. Okay, so what grammar we can consider? Let us consider a grammar for identifying an identifier. Okay, so let us write a rule or a grammar for an identifier. Okay, obviously we have a regular expression to identify an identifier, but now we will do the same thing by using a yak program. Okay, so how do we represent an identifier? Okay, so the automaton that we normally write for an identifier is as follows. So let me assume that this is state number 0. So I will read, first of all, what should be there? There should be a letter. Okay, there should be a letter. So when I read a letter, I move to state number 1. So in state number 1, right, this is a transition diagram, right? So if I read a letter again, or if I read a digit, okay, if I read a letter or if I read a digit, then I will remain in state number 1. Okay, then I remain in state number 1. So if I read anything else other than that, then obviously it is an error. Okay, so because it should not be followed by anything, correct? So it should only contain letter or digit. So I can say that this itself is a accepting state. Okay, I'll mark this with dark circle so that you know that this is an accepting state. So obviously this one would become an error state. Okay, unless you read a space, unless you read a space, obviously, which differentiates this identifier. So we'll consider that as an error. Okay. So now this is the transition diagram for an identifier. Now I have to convert this into a context-free grammar or a CFG. So how do we do that? Okay. So what is a context-free grammar? We will have set of variables, we have set of terminals, and we have set of productions. So what is a production? Production is something that is represented of the form this, right? So we'll have a left-hand side and we will have a right-hand side. So on the left-hand side, we may have variables. On the right-hand side, we may have both, correct? We have variables as well as terminals, right? So it's a format, it's this format that is used in order to represent the production. And of course, we will have a start state. Okay, so let me write a start state as yes. Okay, so which is nothing but this, right? So S can give me what? Okay, so what is the identifier? So it can begin with a letter, correct? It can begin with a letter, right? And let us just use some small letters here. Okay, all right, use the same thing. So it should be letter. Okay, this is for case, for example, A. Okay, is this an identifier? Yes, it is an identifier. What is the second case? It can be AB. Okay, or it can be ABC. Okay, or it can be A1, right? Okay, so all these things are different cases. I'm just using A. You can use any letter or any character. Okay, so if this is the case, right? If this is the case, then obviously it is a valid identifier and have already reached the final state, correct? I have already reached the final state. So this is one thing. So what is the second case? Let us write. So second case is if I have a letter followed by another letter. Okay, letter followed by another letter. So this case is resolved. Okay, or else I can have, okay, I'll just leave this case. I'll write, consider the last one. So it can be letter followed by number. Okay, so it can be a letter or digit. Okay, so letter followed by digit. So I have written a grammar here that covers these three cases, correct? So 1, 2, and 3. But variables can be anything other than these also. So should I keep on writing productions like this? Okay, before that, since I have written a production, we have to understand that which is a variable and which is a terminal and a non-terminal symbol. Okay, nothing but variable and a terminal symbol, right? So obviously, whatever appears on the left-hand side are variables, and whatever appears on the right-hand side are terminals or non-terminals. Okay, or variables, right? So this is how we are starting to write the context-free grammar. But of course, as I said, this does not generalize all the input. It only considers these three input. So how do we generalize, or how do we write a grammar that can actually generalize? Just a second. Power is gone. I will stop the session here to inform E-section students regarding the same. Okay, I'll continue this session later, maybe in the afternoon. Okay, I don't know whether the power is going to come or not, so I'll continue that session afternoon. Okay, so do inform A-section students as well to leave the session and join other class. We'll continue this session in the afternoon. Okay.